His hands rose without him meaning to. Instinct, pure and raw, guided every muscle as if they knew before his mind could catch up. The lynx stood just a few steps away, motionless, eyes fixed on him. Not a sound came from her. No growl, no hiss. Only the sharp stillness of a predator deciding what to do. The forest seemed to stop breathing. His chest hammered against his ribs, too loud, too reckless, and he thought for a moment she would hear his heart and pounce. He froze, a half step back, barely enough to stir the leaves underfoot. Her ears twitched, and those golden eyes narrowed. Was this it? Would she spring, claws tearing through air, teeth snapping into his arm or throat? Or was she simply watching, calculating, remembering? His throat dried instantly. A bead of sweat slipped down his temple even in the cool morning breeze. Then something flickered across his memory. That face, those ears tipped with black brushes, the faint markings on her forehead. It tore open a place in him he had carefully buried for years. He saw not the strong, silent hunter in front of him, but the tiny, shivering bundle he once held in his hands. 5 years ago, he hadn't meant to find her. A gray morning, after a night of rain, he walked the narrow trail by the river. He nearly missed her, tucked under the bridge, a wet and trembling scrap of life. At first, he thought it was a stray kitten, abandoned or lost. But then he saw the telltale signs, the ears, the large paws, the wildness in her eyes. A lynx cub, alone, starving, eyes too heavy to keep open. He should have walked away. He knew better. Wild animals were not meant for people. But something about her tiny body, the fragile ribs pressing under damp fur, made it impossible. He wrapped her in his jacket and carried her home. That choice would carve itself into his life, into his conscience, forever. Those first days were desperate. He phoned rangers, veterinarians, anyone who could help. Some told him she would not survive. Others said he was a fool for even trying. He ignored them all. He made a warm bed out of towels, filled bottles with goat's milk, held her tiny jaw gently as he fed her. She would cling to the warmth of his chest, the faint sound of his heartbeat. Every night, he listened for her breathing, terrified it would stop. Weeks passed. Her strength returned. The once fragile cub learned to climb onto chairs, to leap across the room, to sink her small teeth into ropes and shoes. She grew fast, faster than he expected. She was never tame, not truly. Her instincts sharpened as her body did, but there was a bond, a fragile thread between them. He called her nothing. He refused to give her a name. He told himself he was only keeping her alive until she could live without him. And when that day came, it hurt more than he thought it would. He brought her to a rehabilitation enclosure on the edge of the forest, where the rangers worked with injured or orphaned animals. He visited it first, watching as she learned to stalk again, to recognize the scents of deer, the movements of rabbits. Each visit she came closer to forgetting him, and each time, he forced himself to step back further. Until one day, the gate opened, and she left. She never looked back. That was how it was supposed to be. Now she stood here, years later, stronger, larger, a creature of the wild. But his gut twisted. Something in her posture, in the way she tilted her head, in the way her paw shifted slightly sideways on the grass. It was familiar. It was impossibly familiar. His lips trembled. He whispered words he didn't mean to say out loud. "It can't be you." The lynx blinked slowly, not with aggression, but with the patience of recognition. He felt his knees weaken. For the first time, he dared to believe the impossible. Maybe this was not just any lynx. Maybe this was the cub he had once saved, grown into the mother of the forest. And she remembered. The silence between them pressed down like a weight. He could hear the faint rustle of the wind through branches, the drip of water from last night's rain sliding off a leaf, even the soft tremor in his own breathing. Every sound felt amplified, unnatural, as though the forest itself was holding its breath with him. He tried to step back, slow and careful, but the moment his boots shifted, the lynx did the opposite. She moved forward. His pulse jumped. Every instinct screamed to turn, to flee, but he forced himself to stay. Her movement was not the charge of a predator. It was measured, deliberate, her paws silent on the damp grass. She was closing the gap, not with menace, but with intent. He swallowed hard, feeling the sharp dryness in his throat. Then it happened. A sound, low and familiar, slipped from her throat. Not the growl of warning, Not the hiss of anger, but a soft, throaty chirr, halfway between a purr and a call. His chest clenched. It was the same sound he had once heard countless nights ago, when a fragile cub pawed at his sleeve, demanding more milk, more warmth, more of his presence. His hands trembled at the memory, and his knees weakened as the truth hit him harder than anything else could. It was her. His heart pounded faster, but now not from fear. Emotions swept over him. Relief, disbelief, an aching joy he hadn't felt in years. The years collapsed in on themselves, folding away like paper, until there was no gap at all between the trembling cub he carried in his arms and the powerful creature standing before him now. She remembered. She had to. Why else would she make that sound, the one etched into his memory like a scar? He whispered into the thick air, not trusting his voice to rise above a breath. "It's you, isn't it?" The lynx tilted her head, her gaze steady, calm. The fear that had pinned him down moments ago melted into something else, something that felt almost unbearable: recognition. His chest tightened, and he felt tears sting at the corners of his eyes. He never thought he would see her again, never thought she could survive, thrive, return. And yet here she was. A long moment passed where they stood locked in that strange communion. He almost laughed. How absurd it seemed, how impossible, that a wild animal could hold on to a fragment of the bond they once shared. And yet, he could not deny the rush of certainty inside him. The forest was timeless, yes, but here, now, he was caught in a reunion he had only dreamed about. Then, just as his body began to relax, just as he thought he had absorbed all the shock he could handle, something stirred behind her. A faint scuffle, the smallest crunch of leaves. His eyes darted past her flank, and for a second he thought his mind was playing tricks. But then the movement sharpened, and he saw them. Two tiny forms emerged hesitantly from the undergrowth. Kittens. Lynx kittens, their ears already tipped with the same black tufts, their coats spotted but softer, fuzzier, unrefined. They tumbled into the open, clumsy on their still-growing legs, blinking at the light with wide, curious eyes. His breath caught in his throat. The world tilted. The mother lynx glanced back briefly, then forward to him again, her posture unchanged, unthreatening. It was as if she wanted him to see them, to understand. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Not only had she survived, she had brought new life into the world. He was staring not just at a creature of memory, but at the continuation of her story. A story he had, in some way, helped begin. His hands, still half-raised, trembled in the air. His body shook, not from fear this time, but from awe. The impossible had become real. The cub he had once rescued was now a mother herself. And she had chosen, against all odds, to show him her young. He felt the years dissolve entirely. In that moment, the 5 long, lonely years between them vanished. There was no past, no future. Only this fragile, breathtaking present, where a man stood face to face with a lynx and her kittens, bound together by something neither time nor wilderness could erase. He shifted his stance and slowed his breath. He remembered the rules the rangers taught him. Do not stare, do not rush, make space. He turned his shoulders so he no longer faced her head-on and lowered his hands, fingers open. The kittens wobbled toward their mother and then took 2 curious steps his way before freezing. She answered with another soft chirr and kneaded the ground once with a forepaw. The tip of her tail flicked, not in warning, but in focus. He noticed the pale scar above her eye, a mark he had once seen healing in the enclosure. That small truth clicked everything into place. It was her. "I see you," he whispered. "I'm not here to take anything." He eased his backpack from his shoulder, slow enough that the motion looked like rain deciding to fall. One kitten reached the strap and patted it with testing taps, then sneezed and scooted back. The small sound untied a knot inside him. The mother sampled the air. Maybe she tasted metal, soap, the ghost of milk only he could remember. Smell is memory, he thought. Perhaps that was their bridge. A robin scolded from a branch. The lynx flicked an ear but did not move. He stepped back once, offering space, and she flowed forward half a step, keeping the same careful distance, as if an invisible line held them. He had imagined anger or indifference, never this quiet recognition. The years fell away. The kittens tested everything. One dragged a stick with comic effort. The other tugged at the strap until it toppled onto its belly and mewed. The mother turned her head a fraction, granting permission. She was not showing off. She was letting him glimpse her ordinary. That trust stung his eyes. He wanted to kneel, to make himself smaller, but he held still and spoke once more, barely a breath. You did well. For years he had feared releasing her had been abandonment in a better suit. Watching her now, calm and sure with her young, he understood. Letting go had been the only honest way to keep faith. The wind shifted. The mother placed her paw slightly to the side. A sideways touch he remembered from the cub, a quiet sign of curiosity. Certainty rang through him like a bell. The bold kitten tugged the strap again and looked up. It took 2 small, deliberate steps closer until only a handspan of air separated them. He did not move. Behind it, the mother watched him, steady as a promise. And a thin, bright thought pierced the quiet. She could have avoided him easily, yet she stepped into sight and called to him in that unmistakable voice. If this was a message, he was ready to listen. He stood frozen, every muscle taut, as the 2 kittens stumbled closer to their mother's side. His mind screamed warnings. Young ones meant danger, meant a mother ready to defend at the slightest threat. One wrong move could end this fragile moment. He fought the urge to back away too quickly, knowing suddenness might shatter the balance. The air between them buzzed with uncertainty, but the lynx did not spring. Instead, she turned her head, nudged one of the kittens forward with her muzzle, then the other. His chest tightened. It was not a threat. It was something else entirely. She was showing him her young. The weight of the gesture nearly brought him to his knees. He had read, heard, even dreamed of moments when wild animals extended a flicker of trust. But this was absolute. She would never expose her cubs unless she felt no danger. She remembered him. The truth of it burned through him, leaving his throat thick and his vision blurred. He drew in a shaky breath and stayed still, letting her decide how close to allow. The kittens blinked at him, ears twitching, bodies still awkward with youth. One pounced clumsily on a fallen leaf, then darted back under its mother's belly, peeking out with wide eyes. The other, bolder, took 2 steps forward, tiny paws sinking into the damp moss. He nearly laughed at the sight, the sound catching in his throat and turning into a silent sob. He saw her, the cub he once held in his hands, now standing tall, strong, and unafraid, guiding life into the world. Memories spilled over him. Nights of little sleep, holding the fragile bundle close to his chest under a blanket, warming her against the chill. The soft suckling sounds as she fed from the bottle, the way her tiny claws pricked his skin as she clung for comfort. He remembered her frailty, the fear that she would not make it through another dawn. And now, before him, that same fragile creature had become a mother. The realization was almost too much. He pressed his hand against his chest, as if to keep his heart from bursting. The forest seemed to fade away until only they remained. The man, the lynx, and her kittens. He longed to reach out, to touch, to bridge the space, but he knew better. This was not his to claim. This was hers. Her eyes never left him, steady and unblinking. There was no aggression there, only a quiet understanding. She pressed her nose once more against the bolder kitten, nudging it further toward him. His breath hitched. It was as if she was saying, "I trust you. Look what I have made of the life you once saved." He whispered, barely audible. Words meant more for himself than for her. "You're safe, you're whole, and they're beautiful." The lynx flicked her ears, tail swishing once, not in agitation but in calm acknowledgement. She settled on her haunches, still watching him, as the kittens tumbled clumsily into one another's sides, squeaking their small frustrations. He smiled through the wetness in his eyes, but it was a smile carved with both joy and pain. He understood now. This meeting was not random. It was not chance. It was a gift, an unrepeatable offering from a creature who owed him nothing, but still chose to share her most precious secret. And like all gifts, it came with its own truth. It was fleeting. She was not his to keep, and never had been. The ache of it burned in him, but so did the wonder. He nodded slowly, as if accepting terms spoken without words. "Thank you," he whispered, "for this." She shifted, gathering her kittens close again. He felt the balance tip. The moment was ending. His throat ached with the weight of it, but he forced himself to breathe steadily, to take in every detail. The soft speckled fur of the cubs, the scar above her eye, the calm dignity in her posture. This was the end and the beginning all at once. He would carry it forever, even as she returned to the wild where she belonged. And in that quiet ache of parting, he understood, some bonds do not fade with time or distance. They only change shape. He closed his eyes for half a second, capturing it in memory, then opened them again to watch as the lynx rose, her kittens pressed tight against her sides. He knew then, with painful clarity, that this encounter was both a reunion and a goodbye. He stood rooted in place, the air trembling between them, as though the entire forest had stretched a bridge of silence connecting man and lynx. Her eyes locked on his, unblinking, steady, carrying an ancient weight he could not fully name. He drew in a breath, steadied his voice, and spoke softly, his words not meant for understanding but for feeling. I don't know if you remember everything. I don't know if any part of me stayed with you through those years. But I remember. I always remembered. His tone was calm, low, each word pulled from the center of his chest. The lynx did not flinch. She listened, or at least she stayed, and in that staying was its own answer. Her kittens fumbled at her paws, chasing each other in small circles, but she never broke her gaze. His throat tightened as he continued. You survived. You made it. And more than that, you brought them into this world. I can't tell you what that means to me, but maybe you already know. He thought of how many times over the years he had questioned his choice, wondered if releasing her had been mercy or betrayal. He had carried the doubt like a stone in his chest. But now, standing in this clearing with her, watching the life she carried forward, that stone began to crumble. He realized the choice had not been his to claim. It had always been hers. Minutes passed, or maybe only seconds. He could no longer tell. Time thinned to a single thread. The forest noises receded until only their breathing remained, his shallow and shaky, hers steady, controlled. He let his hands fall slowly to his sides, showing her he had nothing, holding nothing but the weight of this moment. A gust of wind shifted through the clearing, carrying the smell of pine, damp earth, and something unspoken between them. He whispered again, voice raw now. Thank you for letting me see this, for letting me know it mattered. The lynx's ears flicked, her tail swept once behind her, and for the first time she blinked slowly, deliberately. The gesture pierced him, small, simple, but profound. He felt an odd warmth spread through his chest, as if she had spoken without words. Yes. The kittens squeaked, tumbling toward a log, their playful sounds breaking the weight of the silence. The mother shifted, rising with fluid grace, gathering them with a quiet flick of her tail. He knew the moment was ending, and a desperate part of him wanted to call out, to beg her to stay. But he didn't. This was not his to hold. It was his to witness, and to let go. She turned slowly, guiding her kittens toward the undergrowth. His breath caught as she paused once, halfway into the trees. She looked back over her shoulder, her golden eyes meeting his again. The look was brief, a flicker in the dimming light, but it held him in place, branded him with something he couldn't quite define. Gratitude? Recognition? Or just the quiet acknowledgement of two lives that had crossed in a way neither could forget. And then she was gone. The brush closed behind her, the sound of her paws fading into the hush of the forest. Only the whisper of leaves remained, stirring where she had passed. He stood in the empty clearing, the weight of absence pressing hard and yet strangely lifting him at the same time. He let out a long breath, his shoulders sagging. The silence around him no longer felt heavy but sacred. He felt no fear, no regret, only a fullness, as though the years of doubt had finally found their answer. She had lived. She had thrived. She had remembered, in her own way, and that was enough. The clearing seemed different now, brighter, even as dusk settled deeper into the trees. He stayed there for a long while, unwilling to break the spell, unwilling to move in case some trace of her still lingered in the air. The forest slowly resumed its rhythm. A bird's call, the drip of water, the rustle of something small in the brush. Life continued, as it always did. He finally whispered to himself. She remembered. Saying it aloud anchored it inside him, turned it into truth he could carry home. As he turned to leave, the question lingered at the edge of his mind, one that would never find an answer. Had she sought him out, knowing, remembering? Or had chance delivered them into each other's paths once more? The uncertainty didn't wound him. It was part of the gift. Some mysteries were meant to remain. He walked back down the path, the twilight deepening around him, his steps lighter than they had been in years. Behind him, the forest closed, but inside him, the moment stayed. A moment of trust, of recognition, of farewell, a moment he knew would outlive him. For in that silent exchange with the lynx, he had glimpsed something beyond words, that even in the wild, memory and gratitude endure.